For the third time, I was stood up at the Civil Affairs Bureau. The staff joked, "That military officer has also been waiting all morning. Why don't you two pair up?" After a single glance at each other, we got our marriage certificate in just 10 minutes. My ex-fiancé must be going crazy with regret. For the fourth time, I stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, clutching the household registration booklet tightly in my hand. Now it was warmed and slightly dampened by my body heat. I felt like a prisoner awaiting the final verdict. Every time I looked up, I could see the glass door across from me, the symbol of happiness and commitment, but to me, it felt as distant as if it were a world away. My phone rang at the worst possible moment, the name G. Sinian flashing on the screen like a summons. I took a deep breath and pressed answer. His familiar, gentle voice came through the receiver, tinged with a deliberate weariness. "Qingyang, my dear, listen to me, there's an unexpected issue at the company, a very important merger case. The other side's big boss suddenly arrived early, and I have to be there. I really can't get away." My heart grew cold inch by inch, even the fingers holding the phone turning pale. "So what?" I heard my own voice, as calm as still water. "So it'll have to be another day again." He paused, as if weighing his words, then said in a coaxing tone, There, don't be angry. I know you've been waiting a long time, and it's my fault. Once this project is done, I promise I'll make it up to you. How about I take you to Greece, your dream destination? Same old story. Next time, I'll make it up to you." This was already the fourth time he had left me standing alone at the bustling entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau at the last minute. Using the same excuse, around me, happy couples, arm in arm, beamed with joy, every smile like a needle pricking my heart. My dignity, my 4 years of youth at this moment, they all felt like a colossal joke. "Qingyang, are you listening? Don't throw a tantrum, I have a meeting soon, so let's leave it here. I'll call you back." G. Sinian seemed impatient, about to hang up without waiting for my response. "It's been 4 years, I cut in, my voice trembling in a way I hadn't expected. "Do you really think there's a next time?" Silence fell on the other end of the line. Just at that moment, a uniformed female staff member nearby, probably because she saw me standing for so long, and couldn't bear it, half-jokingly said, "Miss, don't wait any longer. You've been waiting since morning and your face has gone pale. Your partner is too unreliable." She pointed not far away. "Look, that officer guy has been waiting all morning too. Seems like he's been stood up as well. Why don't you two pair up? I think you two look quite suitable together." I followed her direction and looked over. Not far away, a man in crisp military uniform and dress clothes stood quietly, like a pine. In form, with broad shoulders and a slim waist, he had been there since I arrived. Hours passed, and his posture never changed. He seemed to have heard the joke as well. He turned slightly toward the sound, his deep gaze sweeping through the crowd and precisely landing on me, with a calm, unruffled expression, like a bottomless ancient well, yet bearing the sharpness unique to a soldier, as if he could pierce through a person's heart in the moment our eyes met. 4 years of grievances, waiting, self-consolation, and absurdity, like a giant bubble, were gently punctured by his tranquil glance. Why must my love be sacrificed again and again for his career? Why must my dignity be trampled under his feet without restraint? An unprecedented surge of impulse mixed with complete despair rose from my core. I no longer paid attention to the hesitant breathing of G. Simian on the other end of the phone, and I slammed the red end call button on the screen. Then I stepped forward, weaving through the crowd that cast pity or curiosity, and walked toward the man in uniform step by step, facing his searching gaze. My throat went dry, and I forced out a hoarse question with all my strength, something even I thought was crazy. "Are you willing?" He fell silent for 2 seconds, and those deep eyes of his looked at me quietly, as if confirming that I was not joking. The surrounding air seemed to solidify, and I could almost hear my own drum-like heartbeat. Just when I thought he would treat me as a lunatic and turn away from this absurd scene, his thin lips parted, and he nodded firmly. "Okay," one word, concise and decisive, resounding 10-minute hours later. When 2 brand new red notebooks with the smell of ink were handed to me by the staff, I still felt as if I were in a dream. Exiting the Civil Affairs Bureau, the afternoon sun was a little dazzling, making it hard to keep one's eyes open. The edges of the red book in my hand glowed in the sunlight and even burned my skin a little like 2 hot irons. engraving an absurd and resolute mark on my 26-year-old life. I am Xu Qingyang, a relic restorer. My work is to converse with imperfection and time, to mend cracks with the greatest patience, to retrieve the flowing light. But my own life has shattered into shards I cannot pick up. The man beside me, who has just become my legal husband, is Qin Zhon besides this name, and the photo on his officer's ID card showing a face sharp as a hawk. I know nothing about him. He is more than a head taller than me, and his crisp military uniform has not a single crease. Like a drawn sword, when he walks, his steps are steady, each stride measured as if by a ruler, forming a stark contrast with my somewhat panicked steps in high heels. The air is filled with suffocating awkwardness. We are like two strangers forced into the same space, acting in a farcical play for which even a script doesn't exist. Comrade Xu Qingyang, he spoke first, his voice deep and carrying the penetrating tone unique to soldiers, as if it could dispel a hint of the heat. The title left me feeling a bit dazed, as if I had returned to a certain red era. I stopped in my tracks, looked up at him. In the sunlight, his skin had a healthy bronze tone. Beads of sweat glistened along his brow, yet his eyes remained tranquil. Do you have something to say, Comrade Qin? I responded using his form of address. Though he seemed slightly amused by it, his face remained expressionless. He simply took a neatly folded military wallet from his pocket, pulled out a bank card, and handed it to me. This is my payroll card. The PN is 6 zeros. From now on, money will be deposited on this day every month. Take it and buy whatever the household needs. I froze, instinctively stepping back to avoid the card he was offering. That's not necessary. I have a job, it's procedure, he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. Military spouses are entitled to shared financial management rights. He paused, then pulled a folded slip of paper from his pocket. And this is my phone number and military unit address. I may be away on missions and unreachable by phone for long periods. If there's an emergency, you can contact my direct unit through this address. He pressed the card and the note into my hand without hesitation, leaving no room for refusal. I clutched the cold card and the warm slip of paper, my fingers trembling slightly. This didn't feel like a wedding, it felt like a handover of supplies. He had issued his identity and financial means to me like equipment. I opened my mouth, wanting to ask, do you trust me, a complete stranger, this much, or what do we do next? Countless questions stuck in my throat, none of them making it out. Just then, the phone in his pocket buzzed briefly. He answered immediately, saying only 2 words, copy that. Then he hung up. He looked at me, and for the first time, there was an emotion in his eyes that I could read. Apology. I'm sorry. The mission is urgent. I have to report back immediately. I nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of relief. Your address? He asked. I told him the name of the neighborhood where I rented a place. He nodded, as if committing a map to memory. Got it. When I return, I'll take care of the paperwork for you to join as a military spouse. Take care of yourself in the meantime. With that, he gave me a standard military salute and turned to leave. No hug, no goodbye, not even an extra word of concern. With firm steps, he merged into the crowd, his tall and resolute figure quickly disappearing around the street corner. I stood there alone, clutching an unfamiliar salary card and 2 red marriage certificates in my hand, feeling like a joke. My ex-fiancé and I were in love for 4 years, and he never confessed a single detail about his finances to me. And Qin Zhon, a man I had known for less than an hour, handed over his entire fortune into my hands. A huge sense of unreality enveloped me as I looked down at the wedding certificate, at the photo of us standing side by side. In the photo, my eyes were red and my expression was blank. Meanwhile, he remained calm and composed, the same as always, unfazed as if nothing had happened. I suddenly remembered that from the very right to the end, he never asked me why I appeared alone at the Civil Affairs Bureau, nor did he ask why I agreed to that ridiculous proposal. He seemed to be carrying out a task, and I happened to be the target. The phone rang again at an inopportune moment, and the screen still showed Ji Sinian. Looking at this name, the grievance and anger that had been suppressed for 4 years finally found an outlet. I answered and, before he could speak, mustered all my strength and said, word by word, Ji Sinian, congratulations. You are free now. I am married. On the other end of the line, there was a deathly silence. The nearly 4-year-long habitual steady breathing was gone. I could even imagine him. Now sitting in a spacious executive chair, his brows knit, that usually unruffled face finally showing a crack. That image gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. Qing Yang, don't be ridiculous. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice carrying a trace of fatigue. His tone mixed weariness with indulgence, as if comforting a troublesome child. I know you're angry. I was wrong. That merger deal is really important. You know this is the company's biggest project this year. Once I'm through this period, I'll make it up to you properly. Take you on a trip to Europe, okay? The voice on the line remained gentle, but it made me physically nauseous. This same routine again. Whenever he made a mistake, he used this condescending charitable compensation to shut me up, never admitting fault, only thinking I didn't understand, that my emotions were delaying his important work. In the 4th year, I calmly interrupted him. I'm not joking. The marriage certificate is in my hand now. Do you want to see the photo? The other end fell silent again, and this time the silence was so long that I almost thought he had hung up. Finally, his voice, cold as ice. With whom? A soldier. I replied. Ha! He let out a short, cold laugh, dripping with disdain and mockery. Shu Qingyang, you really stop at nothing to get under my skin. You just picked some random person at the Civil Affairs Bureau to marry. Do you think this is a game? Do you even know what this means? Of course I knew, looking at the 2 red booklets in my hand, with the solemn national emblem on them. Starting today, I was Qin Zhon's lawful wife, protected by the law, and as for him and me, nearly 4 years of entanglements, this was the end. Without giving him any chance to explain, I hung up decisively and added his number to my blacklist. The world was finally quiet. Dragging my exhausted body back to the apartment I rented, I pushed open the door. The place still looked the same as last night. I had taken a special day off for today's registration, cleaning the room until it was spotless, placing fresh lilies in the vase, and even making a homemade couple's cake to celebrate in the evening. Looking at it now, it all felt like a huge irony. I walked over and, expressionless, dumped the entire cake into the trash, along with the bouquet of lilies symbolizing a century of harmonious union. Then I began packing up the things Ji Sai Nyan had left here, a change of clothes, a razor, and a few professional books he would never touch. We had dated for 4 years, he visited here rarely, and each time it was brief. I packed all his belongings into boxes and had them shipped by same city express to his company, an address I knew well. After all, I had poured half my heart into that company. In the early days of the startup, I stayed up countless nights with him, and it was my savings from repair work that helped him get through the money shortage. But once the company found its footing, the Russ in his words quietly turned into me. After finishing all this, I felt as if all my strength had been drained, and I collapsed onto the sofa. Only then did the creeping panic flood over me like a tide. I am getting married to a man I have only met once. I don't even know his age, where he's from, what he likes to eat, or what hobbies he has. I only know his name is Qin Zhon, and he is a soldier. This marriage feels like a huge blind box. I don't know whether opening it will bring joy or fear. I take out my phone and, as if by some strange instinct, type military marriage, and the screen fills with dense terms: sacred, loyal, devoted, few contacts, long distance, special responsibilities and duties. Every word weighs like a heavy stone on my heart. Shu Qingyang, a person who is used to following procedures and living in a precise little world, can she really shoulder all of this? Just as I was lost in thought, the doorbell rang. I thought it was the courier coming back for the pickup, so I opened the door without thinking. Standing outside was Ji Sai Nyan. His face was ashen, his eyes bloodshot. The high-end suit he wore was slightly rumpled, completely lacking his usual elite bearing. He pushed the door open in a rush, sweeping the empty room with his gaze, which finally landed on the trash bin by my side where his favorite razor lay. Shu Qingyang, have you had enough playing? He grabbed my wrist with a terrifying force. Come with me to the Civil Affairs Bureau to end this absurd marriage, and then we'll go register. I was pinched so hard that it hurt, and I struggled to break free. Ji Sinian, let go of me. I told you, we're done. Done. It's not over unless I agree. His bloodshot eyes made him look like an enraged trapped beast. Who is that man? Where is he? Tell me. I'll give him money and tell him to get lost, name your price, I'll pay it. His words were like a venom-coated knife stabbing deep into my heart. In his eyes, everything could be measured by money, including my marriage and my dignity. Trembling with rage, I raised my hand and slapped him as hard as I could. The sharp crack echoed through the silent room. Ji Xinyan's head snapped to the side, a look of disbelief on his face. Get out, I pointed at the door, my voice cold as ice. Get the hell out of my world for good. He covered his face, staring at me with an intense, tangled look, anger, unwillingness, and a hint of hurt I couldn't quite read. He had probably never imagined that I, who am always so gentle, would ever lay a hand on him. Caught in the stalemate, my phone rang again. It was a number I didn't recognize. I pressed the answer button and turned on the speaker, and a gentle yet authoritative female voice came through. May I ask if Miss Xu Qingyang is here? I am Qin Zhon's mother. Those 7 words hit me like a depth charge, exploding in my chaotic mind. Ji Shan's anger, my own grievance, the absurdity of the hurried marriage, all of it was washed away by this sudden message from a mother-in-law. I nearly broke free from the previous stalemate at once. Gripping the phone, my body involuntarily stood straight as if the person on the other end could see me. Hello, Auntie. My voice trembled slightly. Even I could hear my own unease and nervousness. Ji Shan was taken aback. The grip on my wrist loosened. He frowned and fixed his gaze on me, as if judging whether I was acting. The lady on the other end hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words. Her tone remained gentle but carried an undeniable force. We just received a notice from the army saying Qin Zhon registered today. His father and I are in your city now and would like to see you. Is that convenient? My mind went completely blank. Meeting the parents. How could I meet them in this state? And Ji Shan was still here. I looked at him as if asking for help, hoping he would leave. But not only did he not leave, he wore a spectator's smile, crossing his arms and leaning against the wall, as if certain I wouldn't be convenient. Auntie, it's just that I'm a bit tied up right now. It might have to be later. I tried to make my voice sound steadier. No problem. We'll wait for you. Send us the address, and we'll come to you. The other party spoke decisively and briskly, leaving no room for negotiation. After hanging up, I felt like I was about to collapse. What kind of thing is this? I just married a stranger this morning, and now I have to face his suddenly appearing parents this afternoon. Ji Shan finally spoke, his tone dripping with sarcasm. So, the show's running out. Xu Qingyang, you really amaze me. You went to such lengths to take revenge on me that you even lied like this. Will you hire 2 random actors to pretend to be your parents later? I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. The most important thing now was to deal with Qin Zhon's parents. Taking a deep breath, I stepped in front of Ji Shan, opened the door, and made a polite gesture. Mr. Ji, I won't trouble you further with my family affairs. Please leave at once. I don't want the elders in my family to see any unrelated people in the house. Unrelated people. Ji Shan was stung by these 3 words, stepping forward to close in on me. Xu Qingyang, 4 years of our relationship, and in your eyes, that makes us unrelated. Tell me, does that guy Qin Zhon even know you? Does he know you're allergic to UV rays and can't be exposed to the sun for long? Does he know you need absolute silence when restoring artifacts, not even the slightest sound? Does he know your stomach is weak and you can't eat spicy food? With each question he asked, my heart tightened a little more. Yes, Qin Zhon knew none of this apart from those 2 red marriage certificates. There was a blank slate between us. But precisely because of all this knowing, Ji Xinyan had gained the leverage to hurt me time and time again. He knew I needed quiet. Yet when I was under the most pressure working on a restoration project, he brought a group of friends over for a party. He knew my stomach was weak. Yet he always called me late at night after getting drunk at business dinners to ask me to join him for spicy late-night snacks. He knew everything about me, yet never truly respected me. Enough, I cut him off, my gaze cold. He doesn't know these things now, but he will. But Ji Xinyan, you will never truly want to know. In your heart, there's only your career, your ambition, your mergers and acquisitions. My words were like a key, unlocking the floodgates of his emotions. The mockery in his eyes faded, replaced by a near-crazy obsession. Who am I doing all this for? Xu Qingyang, it's for our future. You think the business world is just about inviting people to dinner? One wrong step and I'm doomed. The investor I met today will determine whether my company lives or dies in the next 5 years. Compared to that, is postponing our registration by 1 day really so important? Yes, it is. I looked him in the eyes and said word by word, it's not as important as your career, but it's more is my dignity less important than anything else to you? Ji Sinyan, you've made me wait 4 times, and each time felt like a public humiliation. You left me standing alone at the Civil Affairs Bureau, making everyone laugh at me. In your heart, is my dignity worthless? Ji Sinyan's lips moved, but no words came out. Just then, there was a knock at the door. My heart sank. It must be Qin Zhon's parents. I walked around Ji Sinyan, who stood there motionless, and went to open the door. Outside stood a distinguished middle-aged couple. The man wore a crisp white polyester cotton shirt. He was lean but upright, with a hint of Qin Zhon in his brows and eyes, carrying the commanding presence of someone long accustomed to authority. The woman wore an elegant dress, her hair impeccably styled. There were fine lines at the corners of her eyes, but she still retained her grace. Her gaze at me was appraising, yet not unkind. Uncles and aunts. Hello. I was so nervous that my palms were sweating. Qin Zhon's mother, Ju Ya, let her gaze cross me and land on Ji Sinyan standing behind me, her brows barely perceptibly furrowed. Who is this? I hadn't had a chance to explain when Ji Sinyan had already adjusted his expression, proactively extended his hand, and flashed his signature corporate elite smile. Hello, uncles and aunts. I am Ji Sinyan, a friend of Qingyang. I heard she's getting married today, so I've come to congratulate her. He deliberately emphasized the word friend, his posture impeccable, partly a sincere well-wisher, partly a declaration of ownership. Qin Zhon's father, Qin Zhongwo, did not shake his hand. He only swept a glance over him, a gaze sharp enough to pierce the heart. He spoke in a deep voice. Our family matters don't need Mr. Ji's involvement. With one sentence, he clearly cut Ji Sinyan off, and the hand Ji Sinyan had extended was frozen in mid-air. Ji Sinyan's face instantly darkened. He had probably never been so bluntly rejected in the business world or outside of it. The air around Qin Zhongwo carried a natural, unchallenged authority that Ji Sinyan's capital-driven elite aura could not. Compared to, Mom and Dad, please come in quickly. I hurriedly stepped aside to usher my parents inside. Ju Ya stepped in, her gaze quickly sweeping the room. When she saw the cardboard box on the coffee table that I had casually left there, containing Ji Sinyan's belongings, her eyes paused. For a moment before she said nothing. The house is a bit messy. We haven't had time to tidy up yet. You two make yourselves comfortable first. I fumbled to pour water, my heart pounding. Ji Sinyan stood at the door, neither leaving nor staying, his face alternating between pale and ashen. Qin Zhongwo turned to him with a calm tone that carried an unrefusable command. Mr. Ji, we want to talk about a few family matters with our daughter-in-law. I'm afraid you'll be uncomfortable staying here. It was a blatant expulsion, with no courtesy at all. Ji Sinyan's pride was clearly being challenged to the utmost. He drew a deep breath and looked at me, the last thread of hope in his eyes. Qingyang, Ji Sinyan, please leave. I did not look at him, bowing my head as I set the cup on the tea table. My decisiveness was the final straw that crushed him. He finally dropped the pretense, a flicker of menace crossing his face. He stared at me for a few seconds, then turned and left without a word, slamming the door hard behind him. The loud crash felt like the final note of our 4-year relationship. The room finally fell silent, and I stood there, like a prisoner awaiting judgment. Sit down, child. Ju Ya patted the spot on the sofa next to her, her tone softening a bit. I sat down as told. My body taut like a bowstring. I've looked over your file. Qin Zhongwo was the first to speak. His manner was as direct as his son's, with no preamble, a cultural relic restorer. Very good work. Your parents are teachers, and your family background is clean. You're a fine young woman. His unexpected praise caught me off guard. I looked up at him, but he changed the subject, his gaze turning serious. But your union with Qin Zhon was too hasty. My heart sank. A military marriage is no joke. He continued, his voice low but carrying immense weight. It's not just the union of two people, but of two families, even of the individual and the nation. Qin Zhon has a special role. His spouse must be someone who can understand him, support him, and bear the burdens of the family alone. Are you mentally prepared for that? I bit my lip, unable to answer. I wasn't prepared, not in the least. I didn't even know which unit Chin-Jeon was in or what missions he carried out. Ju Ya looked at my pale face and took over, her tone much gentler. Child, we're not here to scold you. That boy Chin-Jeon has always had a mind of his own, and once he decides something, no force on earth can change it. He chose you for a reason. We just want you to understand what you'll face if you marry him. She paused and sighed. Long separations are the norm. It's good if you get to see each other once or twice a year. You'll have to handle everything at home alone, the daily chores, the illnesses of the elderly and the children. When he's on a mission, there's no word from him. You won't even know if he's alive or dead. You can only wait. That kind of life is very hard. I sit quietly listening, as if a scene has already appeared before my eyes. One person eating, one person receiving treatment, a person in a dark room late at night, waiting for a phone call that may ring at any moment. Was that man just now your ex-boyfriend? Ju Ya suddenly asks me. I nod, feeling a bit awkward. I can tell your feelings for each other are deep. She pauses. You're marrying Chin-Jeon today. Was it a momentary impulse? Or have you really thought it through? I ask myself inwardly. Has the whole path been an impulse? Of course, it was impulsive. But do I regret it? Thinking of Ji Sinyen's smug, self-righteous expression, recalling the cold merger case he mentioned, and remembering the times I waited like a fool in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau in that moment, all my love for him was exhausted. Marrying Chin-Jeon might have been a reckless gamble, but staying with Ji Sinyen would have been a descent into an abyss with no return. I lift my head to meet Ju Ya's scrutinizing gaze, take a deep breath, and say words that even surprise myself. Auntie, it was impulsive, but I don't regret it. From the moment I got the marriage certificate, I was ready. No matter how hard it gets, I will wait for him to come back. When I say I will wait for him to come back, even I am startled. Those words don't seem to come from conscious thought. It flowed naturally from the deepest part of my heart. Perhaps the moment I decided to marry Chin-Jeon, some kind of promise had already taken root inside me. After hearing my words, Chin Jeongwo and Ju Ya exchanged a glance, both seeing a hint of surprise in each other's eyes. The stern lines on Chin Jeongwo's face seemed to soften a little. After a moment's pause, he said, "All right, since that's how you feel, we respect your choice. From today on, you are the daughter-in-law of the Chin family. If you ever face any grievances, the family will stand up for you." These few simple words, like a warm current, instantly shattered the toughness I had maintained all day. From the disappointment of receiving Ji Sinyen's call in the morning, to the absurdity of a rushed marriage, to the anger of being confronted at my door, I've kept my nerves taut, like a hedgehog always ready to fight. But now, in front of this mother-in-law I've met only once before, all defenses are down. My eyes grew hot, almost spilling over with tears. I lowered my head quickly, blinked, and forced the sourness back. "Thank you, Mom and Dad," I whispered, once those two terms left my mouth. Even I felt strange and shy. A genuine, warm, and kind smile finally appeared on Ju Ya's face. She reached out, took my hand, and gently patted it. "Good child, from now on we are family." Chin's parents did not stay long. After securing my promise and confirming that I was living comfortably, Chin Jeongwo took a phone call, seemingly from an old comrade in the militia, Ari district, making plans with him, and the two of them stood up to take their leave. Before leaving, Ju Ya held my hand, slipped a warm jade bangle from her own wrist, and without another word slid it onto my wrist. "This bangle was passed down from Grandma Chin-Jeon. It should have been yours long ago. Consider it your welcome gift from me. That jade bracelet is of excellent quality, entirely green, warm to the touch, and clearly very valuable at first glance." I quickly refused. "Aunt, no, Mom, this is too precious. I can't accept it. Family shouldn't stand on ceremony." Ju Ya held my hand, leaving no room for refusal. "From now on, treat this place as your own home. If anything comes up, just give us a call anytime." After seeing my parents-in-law off, I closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a long sigh. The jade bracelet on my wrist felt heavy, a reminder that none of this was a dream. I was really married, and I had gained a pair of in-laws who seemed both reasonable and kind-hearted. In just one day, my life had been completely turned upside down. The next few days were unexpectedly calm. Ji Sinian didn't come to bother me again, perhaps intimidated by Qin Zhongwo's quietly commanding presence, or maybe she had finally come to terms with reality. I poured all my energy into work. The City Museum was preparing for an important exhibition on Song Dynasty porcelain, and the piece I was tasked with restoring was an extremely rare Ru-ware tripod incense burner stand. When unearthed, the stand had shattered into over a dozen fragments, with hairline cracks running through the body. An extraordinarily difficult restoration. In the studio, dressed in a white lab coat, a mask, and goggles, I held a fine brush dipped in a custom adhesive, carefully applying it along the edges of the fragments. The adhesive formula was something I had developed by consulting countless ancient texts and conducting dozens of experiments. It maximized bonding strength while avoiding any secondary damage to the porcelain body. This process demanded absolute focus. My breathing grew soft and shallow, and the world around me seemed to shrink to nothing but this sky-blue porcelain. Its jade-like, warm glaze was covered in fine crackles, resembling crab claw marks, glimmering faintly under the light. Through the fissures, I could almost see the moment it was reborn in the kilns fire 1,000 years ago. Trace the marks left by the hands that once held it in Emperor Huizong's study. This dialogue with an ancient soul brought me an indescribable peace and satisfaction. Only in these moments could I forget the mess of real life. Shu Laosha in a trance again. My colleague Xiao Chen walked over with a cup of coffee, teasing softly, "That skill of yours is truly magical. These pieces are bonded so seamlessly that if I didn't know it was broken before, I'd think it was intact." I smiled, took off my goggles, and rubbed my tired eyes. Still far from it. The hardest part of restoring Ru-ware is color matching, making the restored glaze blend per it matches perfectly with the original sky blue, with a color difference of no more than 3 per thousand. That's the real challenge. 3 per thousand. My God, that takes pixel-level eyesight. Xiao Chen marveled. Only a detail freak like you could pull it off. Just as I was about to respond, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar local number. I walked to the lounge and answered the phone. A courteous yet distant voice came through. "May I ask if this is MS, Xu Qingyang?" "This is the secretary of Ji Sai Nian, the general manager of New He Chuangtou. General Manager Ji would like to meet you to discuss the handling of your original shares in the company." The words original shares pricked me like a needle. Back when Ji Sai Nian was starting his business, I not only cashed out all my savings but also used a small apartment left by my parents as a stake at a very low price. He had spoken beautifully then. "This is our company. You are my most important shareholder and partner." But now he wants to handle it. I don't have time. I coldly refused. "MS, Shu." The secretary's tone remained courteous, but the threat underneath could not be hidden. "General Manager Ji says this concerns your substantial interests. If you don't come today, the company will forcibly repurchase at the market's lowest price, and you will bear all the consequences personally." He was pressuring me, using my most cherished efforts to force me to bow. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. That small apartment is the only thought I have of my mother. I must not have it swallowed up. No, it was in some unclear way. "Address," I said. Half an hour later, I stood below the new He Chuangtou building. The company is located in the city's most prosperous CBD. The imposing glass curtain wall glittered in the sunlight. A far cry from the shabby office building team in my memories. I walked into Ji Sai Nian's office. He stood with his back to me in front of the enormous floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the traffic and crowds below. "You're here." He didn't turn around, his voice cold. "Take a seat." I didn't move, just stood there and asked, "What do you want to talk about?" He turned and threw a document onto the desk. "Sign this. Your apartment. I'll value it at market price. Double counted. You can take cash or equivalent shares, your choice. From now on, you and the company will have no further entanglement." I walked over and picked up the equity transfer agreement. Double the market price. The terms were almost humiliatingly favorable. Did he think money could erase everything? "What if I don't sign?" I asked. "Not sign," he smiled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Xu Qingyang, don't be naive. Do you think you're still the madam boss of this company? I'll tell you, this company officially bears my family name Ji, not Shu's. Without my consent, the shares in your hands are just waste paper, not a single cent to you. Giving you this offer today is out of past sentiments. Don't show your face and then Demand another. Sentiments. I felt as if I were hearing the biggest joke. Ji Sai Nyan. You talking about sentiments? The me just then. The office door was pushed open, and a woman dressed to the nines strutted in, wafting with perfume, carrying a cup of coffee and coquettishly saying, "Miss you, your coffee." She looked at me in a daze, then flashed a provocative smile. His new secretary, the woman who had threatened me on the phone, she set the coffee on Ji Sinyan's desk, brushing close to him, either deliberately or not, and looked at me with a show of dominance. I understood, this was not just a business negotiation, but a deliberately planned humiliation. He wanted me to witness with my own eyes how easily I could be replaced. In both career and love, I trembled with anger, grabbed the agreement on the table to tear it up, but just as my fingers touched the paper, my phone rang again, the same unfamiliar local number. I frowned, answering, thinking it was the secretary again, but on the other end, a low, familiar voice came through, bearing a trace of fatigue and hoarseness that was not easy to notice. "Shu Qingyang, it's me, Qin Zhon." Qin Zhon's voice was like a thunderclap, piercing the tense atmosphere in the office and landing precisely in my ears. I stiffened. Wasn't he supposed to be on a mission? Couldn't he use a phone? How did you? I instinctively lowered my voice. Almost a whisper. In the office, Ji Sinian and his new secretary looked at me with astonishment. Ji Sinian's brows were tightly knitted, as if he were guessing who was on the other end of the call. "I'm at the 15th floor of the orthopedics department of City First People's Hospital. There's a little trouble. Can you come over?" His voice was very calm, without any emotion, but the word orthopedics still made my heart clench. "Are you hurt?" I raised my voice, completely forgetting my surroundings. Ji Senian's expression suddenly darkened. His gaze was sharp as he fixed on my phone. It was just a small scrape, but Qin Zhon spoke lightly and then abruptly shifted the topic. "But the hospitalization needs a family member's signature." The word family member stung me again, reminding me of the absurdity between us that was protected by law. "I'll be there immediately." Without hesitation, I hung up, grabbed my bag, and rushed out. "Stop," Ji Sinian barked. "Shu Qingyang, our business isn't finished yet." I stopped and turned to look at him coldly. "Ji Sinian, from today on, your business has nothing to do with me, and mine won't be under your control either. I'll have my lawyer discuss this agreement with you." After saying that, I no longer looked at his shocked face and walked briskly out of the office. Behind me came the sharp sound of shattering glass and a woman's scream, but I paid no attention. I ran downstairs, hailed a taxi on the street, and headed straight for City First People's Hospital. In the car, my heart was racing, and my mind was in complete chaos. Was he seriously injured? Orthopedics? Could it be a fracture? Wasn't he on a mission? How did he get hurt? Countless questions swirled in my head, leaving me restless and agitated. Only then did I realize that I had developed a genuine concern for this husband in name only. When I arrived at the hospital, I found the orthopedic ward on the 15th floor using the address he gave me. In the double room at the end of the corridor, Qin Zhon was sitting on the hospital bed. He had changed into blue and white striped pajamas, his left arm strapped in a sling across his chest, and there were a few small scratches on his face. He looked a bit pale but was in reasonably good spirits. Playing chess with an older man in the same hospital attire. When he saw me, he paused for a moment, then smiled at the older man and said, "Sir, my family is here, let's call it a day." "Oh, sure. Your wife is really beautiful," the older man said cheerfully as he packed up the chessboard. The word wife made my face flush as I walked awkwardly to the bedside. "How are you? Where are you hurt?" I asked anxiously. "I'm fine," he said, pointing to his left arm. "The dislocation has been reduced, just a few scrapes. I'll be fine after a few days of rest." Seeing how nonchalant he was, an inexplicable surge of anger flared up inside me. "A dislocation and you call that fine? Don't you know how much a dislocation hurts? What did the doctor say? How long do you need to stay in the hospital?" My rapid-fire questions caught him off guard. He raised his deep, set eyes and quietly looked at me for a few seconds, his gaze hiding emotions I couldn't read. "The doctor suggests 2 days of observation." He paused, then added, "He said I have a mild concussion. It happened during a drill, not a real mission, an accident. So it was just a drill." I felt relieved inside, but my anger didn't subside. "You can be this careless even during a drill?" "You." Before I could finish, the door to the hospital room was pushed open, and a young man in an officer's uniform walked in. Carrying a thermos, seeing me, he paused for a moment, then immediately snapped to attention and saluted, addressing Qin, battalion commander. Then he turned to me, saluted again, and said in a booming voice, "Hello, sister-in-law, I'm the battalion commander's bodyguard, Chen Mo." The way he called me sister-in-law made my scalp tingle and my cheeks flush bright red. Qin coughed, waved his hand, and said, "All right, put the things down, you can go back now." "Yes, Chen Mo." Set down the thermos, gave me another smile, and flashed a row of white teeth. "Sister-in-law, I'm counting on you to take care of the battalion commander. He's really stubborn and doesn't take his injuries seriously, so please try to talk some sense into him." With that, he saluted again, turned, and left as swiftly as the wind. Now the two of us were alone in the hospital room, the atmosphere even more awkward than it had been outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Have you eaten?" I asked, grasping for conversation, and pointed at the thermos. "Not yet." I walked over and opened it. Inside was millet porridge and a few light dishes. I filled a bowl and handed it to him. "The doctor said you might have a concussion, so it's best to eat something light." He looked at me, then at his own left arm in a sling, and said nothing. Only then did it hit me, he only had one hand free. Should I feed you?" The moment the words left my mouth, I wanted to bite my tongue. The atmosphere instantly froze. I stood there, bowl in hand, unable to go forward or back. A suspicious hint of red seemed to creep up Qin's ears. After a few seconds of silence, he took the bowl with his good right hand. "No need, I can manage." He lowered his head and clumsily drank the porridge with one hand, his movements a bit awkward. Watching his determined profile and tight-lipped expression, an unfamiliar emotion suddenly welled up inside me. This man, my flash marriage husband, was strong and resilient, yet also clumsy and vulnerable. Just then, my phone rang. I pulled it out and saw an unfamiliar local number. Thinking it was Sinian again, I answered impatiently. "Hello." An arrogant, overbearing voice came through the line. "Is this Xu Qingyang? I'm Sinian's girlfriend. I warn you. Stay away from Sinian, a dumped woman like you shouldn't delude herself. He's mine now." The call was on speaker, and every word was like an ice-tipped needle, piercing clearly into the silence of the hospital room. Qin's face darkened instantly. Just as I was about to lose my temper, he suddenly looked up and reached out with his uninjured right hand. "Give me the phone." His voice was as cold as a Siberian wind. Startled, I handed it over without thinking. Qin put the phone to his ear, his tone low but carrying a suffocating pressure. "Who is this?" The woman on the other end, clearly not expecting a man's voice, instantly deflated. "Who are you?" "I found Xu Qingyang. I am her husband." Qin spoke slowly, each word like an icicle smashing against glass. "I don't care what relationship you have with Sinian, but if you dare to harass my wife in this tone again, I will make you and the people behind you pay for every word today." His voice was calm without a trace of disturbance, yet carried a warlike edge forged from mountains of corpses and seas of blood, and it pierced through the wires straight to her. The other end fell into dead silence, and a few seconds later there came a panicked hang-up. Qin returned the phone to me, lowered his head, and kept eating the porridge as if nothing had happened. But I was troubled to the core. His protection gave me the first real sense of safety, yet the mess over at 74 that he had uncovered left me so embarrassed I could hardly bear it. "Sorry," I whispered. "I've caused you trouble." He paused in eating his porridge, looked up at me. "You're not wrong. No need to apologize. Those who harass you are." His gaze was clear and firm, as if this were a matter of natural justice. I said suddenly. I felt that inside this silent man, there resided the simplest and most righteous sense of right and wrong. About that 4th year, he seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "Was he your ex-boyfriend? Your former fiancé?" I forced a smile and decided not to hide anymore. "We were supposed to go register our marriage." He stood me up for the 4th time. "Then I met you at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau." I spoke very calmly, as if I were telling someone else's story. Qin listened quietly, without interrupting, just finishing the porridge in his bowl silently. Finished eating, he handed me the empty bowl. I reached out to take it, but he suddenly spoke. "Do you still have financial ties with him?" I didn't expect him to even catch the part about "have my lawyer talk to you." I nodded. Yes, a stake in some shares. Need help? He asked. No, I rejected immediately. This is my own matter. I can handle it. I didn't want to trouble him again. And even less did I want him to think I married him to find a backing to deal with my ex. He gave me a deep look, didn't insist further, and simply said, all right, but if you ever need it, just say the word. You're a military spouse. And your legal rights will be supported by the military legal aid. Military spouse again. This title felt like a heavy brand, reminding me that my life was now tightly bound to this man and his world. The next 2 days, I took leave from work to look after him at the hospital. But look after might be an overstatement. He's independent and he can handle most things on his own. All I could really do was bring him meals, keep him company, or watch as the nurses changed his dressings. Our dynamic was subtle and hard to define, not quite like a married couple, but not exactly friends either, more like roommates thrown together by circumstance, polite, distant, yet cautiously testing each other's boundaries. I'd tell him amusing stories from restoring artifacts, like the time I was reattaching a leg on a Tang Dynasty tri-color horse and realized the leg was a later mismatch, never belonging to the horse at all. He listened attentively, and occasionally asked, how do you figure out what it originally looked like? Sometimes he'd mention things from his time in the military, but always briefly, like how grueling the field training was, or how delicious the steamed buns from the mess hall were. He never discussed mission details. That was a matter of discipline. Through Guard Shenmue, I learned that Qin Zhon was injured this time to save a recruit. During the exercise, that recruit made a misstep that caused the blasting point to explode early. Qin Zhon threw himself to push him away, and the blast wave knocked him over. His arm dislocated. In Shenmue's eyes and in the eyes of the soldiers who came to visit him, Qin Zhon was a godlike regimental commander, calm and decisive, always at the front, the backbone of everyone. But in my eyes, he was just an ordinary man who would smudge the corner of his mouth when he ate porridge, whose lips trembled slightly when I told a joke, and whose brows furrowed when asleep. On the day of discharge, I went to handle the paperwork for him, but he insisted on doing it himself. I can't always use your money. We argued at the payment window over who would cover the medical bills the first time since we got married. In the end, I couldn't talk him out of it and could only watch as he awkwardly signed his name on the form with his good right hand. Shall I take you back to the unit? I asked. No need. He refused. The unit has a car to pick you up. You should go back to the museum and don't delay your work. He paused, then pulled a key from his pocket and handed it to me. This is the key to the apartment I was allocated. It's not far from your museum. I've filed the report. Once your military escort procedures are completed, you can move in. I took the cold keychain, feeling a mix of emotions. He seemed to sense my hesitation and added, don't feel pressured. It's okay if you don't want to move in. It's just safer there. I understood his meaning. The military compound at least could prevent harassment like Ji Xinjiang's. All right, I'll take it. The military vehicle arrived on time. Qin Zhon got into the car, rolled down the window and said to me, I'm leaving. With no further words, I stood in place, watching the green off-road vehicle disappear into the traffic, my heart heavy and empty. I thought our next meeting would be a distant memory, but 3 days later I received a call from Miss Yu, the lawyer, her tone filled with surprise and confusion. New Huang Ventures suddenly caved in. They not only agreed to all the equity swap terms you proposed, but also added 5 million in cash as compensation for emotional distress. After so many years in the business, I've never seen such a straightforward client. Did you hire some powerful figure to intervene? The lawyer's words left me stunned. A formidable figure. Yeah, she grew even more excited. Yesterday, their legal team was tough and unyielding, but today it's like they're completely different people. They've accepted all our terms and are practically begging us to sign the contract. I probed a little, and all they said was they were acting on instructions from above. Above, the only person I could think of was Tan Zhon, but he's just a battalion commander. How could he possibly influence a high-profile venture capital firm in the private sector? Besides, he had explicitly promised not to get involved in this matter. After hanging up, my heart was clouded with doubt. I immediately sent a message to Shenmue, Tan Zhon's guard, asking if Tan Zhon was available to take a call. Soon, Shenmue replied, Sister-in-law, the battalion commander is in an important meeting. He might be able to get back to you later. I typed out, did you mention my company situation to him? But then deleted it. It didn't feel right, asking if he had pulled strings behind my back would make me seem too distrustful. In the end, I replied with just 4 words, okay, thanks. Still troubled, I returned to my studio. At the museum, the restoration of the RU Kill tripod vessel stand had reached its most critical stage, color matching. I had to carefully apply the prepared glaze into the bonded cracks, drop by drop, so that the new glaze would blend perfectly with the 1,000-year-old celeste of the ancient porcelain. It was a process that demanded extreme precision and patience. I put on my magnifying loupe, picked up a specially crafted fine dropper, and began injecting glaze thinner than a strand of hair into the cracks, 1 drop at a time. My breathing and heartbeat slowed to a minimum, my entire being approaching a state of meditation. Any external distraction could undo all the effort I had put in. However, today, I simply cannot calm my mind no matter what. The lawyer's words and Ji Sai Nyan's unusually calm face after nearly 4 years twisted together into a tightly woven net in my mind, tearing at my nerves. My fingers trembled slightly, and a drop of liquid fell onto the pristine glaze. Startled, I immediately put down the dropper, picked up a cotton swab dipped in a special solvent, and wiped it away carefully. Fortunately, the handling was timely, leaving no trace, but I knew my state was in disarray. So I removed the magnifying glass, leaned it against the back of the chair, and closed my eyes tiredly. The studio door was knocked at this moment, and my mentor, the most authoritative restoration expert in the industry, Professor Zhong, walked in. Xiaoshu, what happened? I see you're unsettled today, he asked with concern. Teacher, I'm fine. I forced a smile. Professor Zhong cast a glance at the porcelain plate on the table, then looked at me and sighed. Your hands are the eyes of a cultural relic restorer, but the heart is the soul of these hands. If the heart is disturbed, the work in your hands loses its spirit. He patted my shoulder and said, go rest a bit, steady your state before you come back. This porcelain plate can wait. It has already waited for 1,000 years. It won't miss a day or 2. I nodded and walked out of the studio back at the apartment. The first thing I did was take out the keys Qin Zhon gave me. The apartment is in the military district compound, just 2 blocks away from the museum. Perhaps a change of environment could calm my mood. The place was allocated by the troops. It was simply decorated but spotless. On the coffee table in the living room lay a first aid kit, and beside it was a note with Qin Zhon's bold and powerful handwriting, common medicines, for use in case of need. Opening the first aid kit, I found the contents were neatly categorized: bandages, antiseptic, gauze, and even an anti-allergy ointment. My heart was gently touched. He still remembered my allergy to ultraviolet light. Just then, my phone rang. It was Qin Zhon. Hello, I answered, my voice a little strained. The meeting just ended. Shenmo said you were looking for me. His voice carried exhaustion, and in the background, I could hear the wind. I hesitated for a moment, then got straight to the point. Ji Xinyan's company suddenly agreed to all my terms today, and even offered extra compensation. It's likely there is a word missing. Maybe offered was intended here. Was that you? There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. This should be. There were a few seconds of silence. I promised you I wouldn't interfere. Then what's going on? I pressed. He paused again, as if choosing his words. One of Shinhe Capital's main investors is Zhongqing Group. The chairman is an old subordinate of my father's. I understood instantly. This wasn't Qin Zhon's influence, but that of his formidable father, Qin Zhongwo. So you asked your father to? My voice came out dry. I did not, Qin Zhon interrupted. It was my mother. She heard from Shenmo about what happened at the hospital that day. So she called my father, Zhu Ya, that woman who said the family will stand up for you. A mix of emotions surged in my heart, gratitude, warmth, but more than anything, unease. I didn't want our marriage to be built on his family's protection from the very start. Qin Zhon, thank you, and please thank your parents for me. But I hope this is the last time, I said earnestly. I want to fight my own battles, he answered simply, without the slightest reluctance. I respect your decision. His understanding slowly eased the unease in my heart. You moved? He asked suddenly. Yes, just got here. Good, he said. Get some rest. Hanging up the phone, I looked at this unfamiliar room. Yet there was an unprecedented sense of calm in my heart. There are no traces of G. Sinian, no entanglements from the past. Everything is a new start, however. The new beginning I thought would come has been completely disrupted by an uninvited guest. The next day, I was in the studio, fully focused on the final photolithography step, when museum security suddenly rushed over in a panic. "Director Shu, something's wrong. Downstairs. There's a group of people downstairs saying you have family here, making a scene in the lobby." My heart sank. My parents are far away. It's impossible for them to come. Who could it be? I rushed downstairs and saw a circle of people in the lobby. In the center were Ji Xinyan's mother and several relatives. The stepmother was grabbing the director, crying with snot and tears. "Director, you must stand up for us. Your staff here, Shu Qingyang, deceived our family's feelings and money for 4 years, and now cooperated with a soldier to threaten us. We are orphans and widows. We have no place to argue." The sharp, piercing cries of the stepmother echoed in the lobby, drawing more and more colleagues and visitors to watch. Her false accusations and tantrums, like a poisoned blade, stabbed into my heart. The blade of slander cut away my dignity piece by piece, leaving it on the ground for them to trample. "You say our family delayed her for 4 years, but we gave her 880,000 in betrothal gifts and even prepared a wedding house. Yet on the day of registration, she ran off with another man. And now she wants to swallow our company's shares. How can there be such a principle in the world?" His words exploded like a bomb among the crowd, and the colleagues' gazes at me instantly shifted from sympathy to astonishment and disdain. "So that's how it is. They took the bride price and still cheated." I couldn't believe it. The usually quiet man is actually a soldier, which means he's breaking the law regarding military marriages. Rumors swarm around me like venomous snakes. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my whole body chilled, so angry that I couldn't speak. I have never taken a single penny of the G family's bride price. As for that house, the property deed lists the names of G Sinian and his mother, having no connection with me at all from start to finish, and the money I invested in the company was the hard-earned money of my parents. But now, in the stepmother's mouth, I've become a greedy, morally corrupt gold digger. I pushed through the crowd and charged in, my voice angry and trembling. "Please watch your words. When did I ever take your family's bride price? Does that house have anything to do with me?" The stepmother, far from calming down, grew even more agitated. She pushed the director aside and rushed over to grab my hair. "You little bitch, how dare you come out? Give me back my son." I was prepared and stepped back to dodge. "Everybody stop." The director's face turned pale with anger as he shouted to the security, "What are you waiting for? Get them all out, and if they cause more trouble we'll call the police." Several security guards immediately stepped forward, trying to separate the stepmother and her relatives. The scene suddenly became even more chaotic. The stepmother, seizing the moment, sat on the ground and started wailing, slapping her thighs and crying. "They're beating people at the museum. The officials and guardians protect them. They're bullying us common folks." This trick is the stepmother's specialty. I had seen her use the same tactic in a mall, forcing a service staff member who bumped into her to kneel and apologize. Watching this absurd scene before me, my heart cooled a little. I suddenly understood that reasoning with someone who has no bottom line is useless. The more you try to prove your innocence, the more they will drag you into the mire, until you are stained with immeasurable filth you cannot wash off. Just as I was about to be swallowed by this endless malice, a tall, upright figure cut through the chaotic crowd and walked steadily to stand in front of me. It was Qin Zhon. He was dressed in a crisp military uniform, with golden stars on his shoulders and his cap pulled low, obscuring his expression, yet just his presence alone seemed to create an invisible barrier, shutting out all the noise and malice. He took off his military coat and draped it over me as I trembled slightly with anger and humiliation. Then he turned to face the stepmother still throwing a tantrum on the ground. "I am Qin Zhon, Shu Qingyan's husband," he said. His voice was not loud, yet it reached clearly to everyone present. A combined arms battalion commander of the People's Liberation Army. After stating his identity, his piercing gaze swept toward the stepmother. You just said my wife conspired with me to threaten you." The stepmother was intimidated by his imposing essence, and her sobbing subsided. "You said she disrupted a military marriage and misappropriated property." His voice turned cold. Article 259 of China's criminal law clearly stipulates that anyone who knowingly cohabits with or marries the spouse of an active duty military personnel shall be sentenced to fixed-term imprisonment of not more than 3 years or criminal detention. He spoke with logical clarity and resolute force, directly citing the legal text. May I ask, have I disrupted someone else's marriage, or is someone trying to disrupt mine? Those who had been whispering moments ago fell silent instantly. As for the issues you mentioned about the bride price and shares, Qin Zhon turned his gaze to our museum director and gave a crisp military salute. Director, I apologize for bringing negative attention to your esteemed institution because of my family matters. I request your permission to use the museum's meeting room and ask you to serve as a third-party notary. I will confront this lady and the so-called victim, Mr. Ji Sinian, face to face, to clarify all the facts. At the same time, I've notified our unit's legal officer, who will be here shortly to record everything as evidence. His words were reasoned and firm, neither overbearing nor submissive, instantly turning the situation around. What had started as a chaotic street drama was suddenly elevated to a matter requiring official intervention and legal justice. The museum director paused, then immediately nodded. All right, I agree. Security, clear the area and prepare the meeting room. My stepmother was completely dumbfounded. She probably never imagined that this plan to cause a scene and pressure me into submission would backfire so badly. He scrambled to his feet and shouted, trying to sound tough despite his fear, "Don't think you can intimidate me with the military. My son will be here any minute. We're not afraid of you." Half an hour later, in the museum's small conference room, Qin Zhon and I sat side by side on one side. Across from us, Ji Xinyan's face was as dark as a burnt pot, while his mother kept wiping her tears. The museum director and several museum leaders sat at the notary table. Qin Zhon's comrades in arms stood off to the side, and a young officer wearing a legal advisor armband had already set up a video camera. All right, Mr. Ji, Qin Zhon spoke first, sliding a document to the center of the table. This is the original share agreement between Xu Qingyang and your company. It clearly states that Xu Qingyang contributed a property in the southern part of the city, valued at 600,000 yuan, in exchange for shares. Do you acknowledge this? Ji Xinyan's lips moved, and finally he nodded. Good. Qin Zhon produced a second document. This is the transaction record our lawyer obtained from the housing authority this morning. It shows that 3 years ago, this property was transferred to Xinchuang Venture Capital's corporate name through an equity transfer. In other words, this property has long been an asset of your company, and my wife Xu Qingyang only holds the corresponding equity. Do you acknowledge that as well? Ji Xinyan's expression grew, even ugliness ensued, and Qin Zhon's gaze shifted to his stepmother. This aunt, you keep saying this is the marriage house your family gave, so, tell me, a house that was already part of the company's assets 3 years ago, how can it become the marriage house you plan to give today? One sentence directly exposed the stepmother's lie. She stammered and couldn't say a word for a long time, and could only beseechingly look at her son for help. And this is only the beginning. As for the 880,000 dowry you mentioned, Qin Zhon's gaze returned to Ji Xinyan. His tone was calm yet carried an undeniable sense of pressure. Please provide the transfer records or bank statements. Any form of proof will do. As long as you can show that Xu Qingyang or her family ever received a single cent of bride price from you or your family, I, Qin Zhon, will apologize to you in front of everyone here today and return double the amount. Ji Xinyan's forehead beaded with fine sweat. Of course he couldn't produce it, because there was no 880,000 at all. It was just a number his mother boasted offhand to show off to the relatives. The meeting room fell silent. The step-mother's complexion turned from red to white, then white to green, and she was restless. Qin Zhon did not give her a chance to catch her breath and continued, I do have some records here. He handed out a stack of printed papers to everyone present. These are part of the transfer records from Xu Qingyan's personal account over the past 4 years to Mr. Ji Xinyan's personal account and to the NU Hechuang Venture Company account, totaling 12 million yuan. The largest single transfer, 500,000, occurred when your company's Series A financing was in trouble. Xu Qingyang redeemed a financial product left to her by her mother and transferred it back to you. Mr. Ji, what did you use this money for? Do you need me to help refresh your memory? Ji Xinyan's body jolted violently. He stared at Qin Zhon in disbelief. As if looking at a devil, these were the most private financial transactions between them. How could he know them so clearly? I was equally shocked. I had never mentioned these details to Qin Zhon. Qin Zhon noticed my confusion and whispered in my ear, I had Chen Mo check the computer in your apartment. Your accounting software wasn't encrypted. My face flushed bright red instantly. It's true that I have a habit of keeping accounts, every single expense recorded clearly, including everything I paid for Ji Xinyan and his company over those years. I originally kept those records just for myself, never imagining they would become the most powerful evidence today. Xu Qingyang never said this money was a loan. She always regarded it as an investment in your shared venture. And you, Mr. Ji, Qin Zhon's voice suddenly turned sharp, is this how you repay your partner? Not only did you fail to show up for the 4th time on the registration day, but after the breakup, you tried to force a buyback of her shares at the lowest price. And you let your mother come to her workplace, ruining her reputation, with lies and slander. With every word he spoke, Ji Xinyan's head drooped lower, until he nearly buried his face in his chest. His stepmother still tried to struggle, shouting stubbornly, then what about her fooling around with other men? That's true, isn't it? On registration day, no less. Ji Xinyan suddenly erupted with a roar, cutting off his mother. He stood up abruptly, his eyes bloodshot as he glared at Qin Zhon, his gaze filled with extreme unwillingness and utter defeat. Fine, I admit it, I'm the one who wronged her. It was as if he had used up all his strength. But Captain Qin, don't act so noble. Do you dare say you married her on anything but a whim? Do you really know her? Do you know who she is? You're just picking up what I threw away. The words were venomous to the extreme. I was trembling with rage and about to retort, but Qin Zhon pressed my hand, signaling me to stay quiet. He stood up and walked step by step to Ji Xinyan. He was half a head taller than Ji Xinyan, his military uniform making his figure tall and imposing. He looked down at him, his eyes showing not anger, but a calmness bordering on pity. You're wrong, he said. I admit that meeting her was an accident, but marrying her is the best decision I've ever made in my life. I'm not like you, needing career success to prove my worth. My value is reflected in the borders I defend and the family I protect. He paused, turning his gaze to me, his eyes filled with a tenderness and resolve I had never seen before. As for who she is, I know better than you do. He is not some parasitic plant that needs to cling to you as you claim. His name is Xu Qingyang, a top-tier cultural relic restorer. His hands can bring broken national treasures back to life, and his heart is 10,000 times stronger than you can imagine. He is not something you discarded, but a treasure you are unworthy of. With that, he didn't spare Ji Xinyan another glance. Taking my hand, he nodded slightly to the curator and everyone present. I apologize for the trouble. My lawyer will handle the follow-up matters. Then, he led me out of the conference room under everyone's complicated gazes. Sunlight streamed through the museum's dome onto us. Looking at his broad back and our tightly clasped hands, tears finally fell from my eyes. They were not tears of grievance, but of being moved, of relief, of rebirth. Once outside, he stopped, and with his uninjured hand, gently wiped the tears from my face. His movements were clumsy but exceptionally tender. Don't cry, you have me from now on. Just then, his phone rang. He answered, and his face instantly turned grim. Copy that, level 1 alert, returning to base immediately. He hung up and looked at me, his eyes filled with apology and reluctance. I have to go. My heart sank. He was leaving again. How long this time? He fell silent. We all know the answer to this question. He can't say it. I will wait for you. He looked at me deeply, and in his eyes were 1,000 words. He did not hug me, nor kiss me, only raised his hand and saluted me, with a solemn military salute. He then turned and rushed to his battlefield with firm steps. I stood in place, watching his silhouette disappear into the sunlight. The jade bracelet from Juyu on my wrist was still as smooth as ever. I know that my war is over, and his war may just be beginning. But this time I won't be alone. My name is Xu Qingyang. I am a cultural relic restorer and also a military wife. I will wait for him to come back. After Qin Zhon left, life seemed to return to its original track, yet something had fundamentally changed. Ji Xinyan and his mother never appeared again. After that confrontation, he vanished without a trace. I only learned from my lawyer that he had accepted all our equity swap terms and publicly issued a clarification statement within the company, shifting all the blame onto his mother and claiming everything was a misunderstanding. I knew he was afraid not of me, but of the unyielding order and power that Qin represented. My heart was calmer than ever, and I poured all my energy into restoring the RU Kill Orange plate. With complete focus, my hands became exceptionally steady, and every step was precise and flawless. When the final stroke of glaze perfectly filled the crack, blending seamlessly with the original sky blue hue and leaving no trace under the light, I let out a long sigh of relief. This national treasure, which had slumbered for nearly 1,000 years, had been reborn through my hands. This sense of achievement was beyond anything any emotional entanglement could compare to. However, the calm I had come to expect was soon shattered. That day, my advisor, Professor Zhong, called me into his office with a grave expression. He handed me a gilded invitation letter. "Mr. Long has specifically asked to see you." Mr. Long? I was taken aback. Mr. Long is a towering figure in the domestic collecting world, rumored to be as wealthy as a nation. With countless treasures in his collection, he is known for being extremely low-key, appearing and disappearing like a phantom dragon, the kind of top-tier client every restorer dreams of. He possesses a family heirloom, a severely damaged Tang dynasty painting of noble ladies, which has been turned down by countless renowned experts both at home and abroad. Professor Zhong's voice carried a hint of excitement. A few days ago, he saw the restoration report of the RU Ware orange plate we exhibited at the museum. He was full of praise for your skills and specifically requested your services. My heart began to race with excitement as well. It would be my honor to restore a national treasure like that. But then Professor Zhong changed his tone, his brow furrowing once more. "Mr. Long is coming this time with a commercial partnership project. He plans to invest 10 billion yuan to establish a world-class private art restoration center in the country, and the partner he has chosen is Xinchun Ventures." What? My blood ran cold. Xinian. That's right, Professor Zhong sighed. Xinian has been scheming for a long time to get in with Mr. Long. This time, he's staked everything on the old house your parents left behind. I instantly understood Xinian's recent actions. He wanted to acquire my studio precisely to curry favor with Mr. Long, using it as the future headquarters of the restoration center in exchange for the partnership. I'm afraid so. Professor Zhong looked at me, his eyes filled with both concern and admiration. I know how much that old house means to you, but Xinian will stop at nothing for profit. I've heard he's already promised Mr. Long through other channels that he will definitely secure your studio. My hands unconsciously clenched into fists. That old house was the only inheritance my parents left me. After I converted it into my studio, it came to embody all my hard work and passion. It's not only the home of my soul but also my sacred ground. How dare Xinian set his sights on it? Professor, don't worry, I know what I need to do. I raised my head, and there was no longer a trace of hesitation in my eyes. In the past, I kept all my sharp edges for him, burying the name Qingyang, which only circulates in the top-tier collecting circles, deep in my heart, simply because he said he didn't like women who showed off more than him. But now it's him who forced me. I haven't contacted people I haven't seen for nearly 4 years directly. Instead, through a mentor's connection, I reached out to a few venerable elders in the co-collecting world. They inadvertently revealed that Xinian intends to forcefully appropriate my studio's work. I didn't mention real names, only used the code name Qingyang. The news, once out, spread like a stone cast into a pond. To ordinary ears, Qingyang might seem obscure, but in the true top-tier collecting circles, it resounds like thunder, a guarantor of memory, a byword for turning decay into wonder. Over the years, every national treasure-level artifact I've repaired has left top-tier collectors marveling beyond measure. Who would dare touch Professor Qinyan's studio? That's not a studio, it's a holy place in our collecting world. New He Chuangto, a small company I've never heard of with such swagger. Tell them that if Professor Qingyang is displeased, they'll be enemies of the entire collecting community. For a time, Xinian hit walls everywhere. The investors and partners who usually greeted him with smiles now kept their distance. He finally realized he had messed with the wrong person and began frantically investigating who Qing Yang was, pulling every string he could, even offering large sums of money for a meeting. Yet no matter what he did, he couldn't connect this legend of the restoration world with Xu Qingyang, the person who only ever made him soup, reminded him to eat, and in his eyes, was rather dull. Ultimately, he managed to arrange a meeting with my mentor, Professor Zhong, through a powerful and untouchable political business magnate, hoping to use the professor to network. One day, I happened to go to my mentor's studio to deliver restored ancient books. As I pushed the door open, Ji Xinian was sitting in front of the tea table with his back to me and facing the mentor, Professor Zhong. His voice carried an uncontrollable urgency. I sincerely want to visit Teacher Qingyang. If she is willing to set aside some of her pride, the price is not an issue. Moreover, if we successfully collaborate on Mr. Long's project, I am willing to donate 10% of the Restoration Center's shares to her for free. He thought such terms would be impossible for anyone to refuse. Professor Zhong took a sip of tea, gave him a faint glance, then looked up at me as I just entered, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. He set down his teacup and waved a hand. Qingyang, come over. I'll introduce you. This is the new partner you've heard about, Ji Zong, who wants to acquire your studio and cooperate. Ji Xinian slowly turned around at the sound of my voice. When his gaze fell on me, that smug, overachieving face of his instantly froze. His pupils sharply contracted, his mouth slightly agape, shock giving way to bewilderment, then to utter disbelief. The color draining from his face inch by inch until it was as pale as paper. Time seemed to stand still, watching him in his dazed state. I felt nothing inside. I calmly walked over to my mentor, bowed slightly, and said, Professor, here's the book you wanted. Only then did I turn to look at him, a cold and distant smile curling at the corner. A corner of my lips twitched. Mr. G, long time no see. I heard you wanted to meet me. The words Mr. G landed like a resounding slap across his face. He opened his mouth, his Adam's apple bobbing. But not a single word came out. The world around him seemed to be collapsing into chaos and ruin as he stared at me like I was a complete stranger. I knew that from this moment on, the Xu Qingyang he once knew, obedient, docile, and someone he could casually sacrifice, was dead. Standing before him was Qingyang, the very person he had gone to great lengths to curry favor with, only to push away with his own hands. After leaving Professor Zhong's studio, Ji Xinian followed behind me, looking utterly lost. Qingyang, you're Qingyang. His voice was hoarse and dry, laced with a dazed disbelief. I stopped but didn't turn around, my cold gaze fixed on the bustling traffic ahead. Does it even matter to you, Mr. G, whether I am or not? Why did you never tell me? He stepped closer, his tone carrying a sense of betrayed anger, but even more so, regret. Finally, I turned around and looked at him as if he were a joke. Tell you, Ji Xinian, I told you my work was important, that it required absolute quiet and focus. And what did you do? You threw parties with your useless friends at the most critical moments of my work. Every piece I restored was priceless. Yet you dismissed me with, aren't you just a tinker fixing pots? I told you all of this, but did you ever once take it to heart? Every word I spoke was like a spike driving into his heart. His face grew paler and paler, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word of rebuttal. So, put away that look of being deceived. I glared at him with disgust. You don't know my value, you just inherently look down on it. In your eyes, only your business, investments, and Manda deals deserve respect. Now you regret it, only because you missed out on the person who could bring you 100 billion project. After saying that, I stopped paying attention to him, hailed a taxi, and strode away. I thought once the truth was revealed, he would stop there. But I still underestimated the shamelessness of their whole family. 74 years old, he probably suffered a massive blow and collapsed. But his mother, upon learning that I am the one who can decide the fate of his son's company, did not restrain herself. Instead, she concocted an even more vicious ploy. She probably thought if she couldn't win with force, she'd try with soft tactics, attempting to morally coerce me. Thus, the earth-shattering farce in the museum hall ensued. She didn't expect that the target of her squabbling was no longer Xu Qingyang, who used to accommodate old feelings and yield, But someone behind me who is even more formidable to deal with. When Qin Zhon appeared with the company's legal affairs officer, he blocked all her cries with cold legal provisions, and my stepmother's flushed face with emotion finally showed real fear for the first time. "You stop scaring me." She crawled up from the ground, stubbornly insisting, "Our family Xin Yan is the victim. It was she who deceived our family of 4 years' worth of affection." MSG. The young legal officer adjusted his glasses, his tone professional and icy. "Your words and actions have already constituted defamation and provocation. Under the Public Security Administration Punishments Law, this is sufficient grounds for administrative detention. Furthermore, you have publicly insulted the spouse of an active duty military service member, a serious offense. The military reserves the right to pursue legal action against you." "What? Detention?" The stepmother was completely panicked. She never imagined things would escalate this far. Additionally, the legal officer produced a document regarding the fact that your son, Mr. Ji Xinian, during his relationship with our client, MS. Xu Qingyang, repeatedly obtained funds totaling 112 million yuan under the pretext of company operational needs. We have reason to suspect this constitutes fraud under the guise of a romantic relationship. We advise MS. Xu to reserve the right to recover these funds through legal channels and pursue criminal liability against the relevant individuals. Nonsense. Qingyang gave that money willingly. It was their joint investment. The stepmother shrieked. "Oh!" Qin Zhon let out a cold laugh. He had remained silent until now, but when he finally spoke, his words carried immense weight. If it was an investment, then why did Xinhe Venture Capital never conduct any post-dilution confirmation or supplementation of shares for MS. Xu Qingyang, the original angel investor, during the subsequent 3 rounds of financing? Instead, after the breakup, they tried to force a buyback at a valuation far below the market price. MSG. Your son's behavior in business is called breach of trust and faithlessness. In law, it is called misappropriation. Qin Zhon's every sentence was like a precise bullet, shattering all of his stepmother's evasions. She went completely dumbfounded, muttering again and again, "What about longing? I want to find my son." Mingnian, soon, Ji Shan, who had been summoned, rushed to the scene and saw the scene in the conference room, especially the officer wearing a legal advisor armband and the camera set up, and his legs went weak. He understood even more clearly than his mother. Once things reach this level, there is no room for any more quibbling. The ensuing confrontation was a complete one-sided rout. Qin Zhon and the legal officer tore apart all the lies and slander from the mother and son of the Ji family with irrefutable evidence, bank transfer records, property transfer documents, and equity transfer agreements for the company. The stepmother, from beginning to end, could not utter a single complete sentence beyond crying and repeating, "I don't know." Ji Xinian kept his head down throughout, his face shifting from pale to ashen to deathly gray, not even daring to look up at me. The museum director and several museum leaders, who had initially looked at me with doubt, now regarded me with full sympathy and admiration. They probably never imagined that Xiao Shu, who usually quietly buries himself in old D documents, had such a tumultuous past and such formidable inner strength. Finally, the legal officer closed the file and delivered the concluding statement. Given that MS. Ji Hongxia, stepmother's actions have caused serious damage to MS. Xu Qingyan's reputation and severely disrupted public order at the museum, we demand that MS. Ji issue a public apology to MS. Xu Qingyang in a municipal newspaper within 3 days, otherwise, we will formally file a lawsuit. Second, regarding the equity issue in Xinhe Chuangtou, we will re-engage a third-party agency for asset valuation and request that Mr. Ji Xinian repurchase MS. Xu Qingyan's original shares in cash based on the company's highest current valuation, along with paying the dividends due over the past 4 years. As for the 112 million yuan, the legal officer turned his gaze to Ji Xinian. We classify this as a conditional gift intended for marriage. Since the purpose of marriage can no longer be achieved, we demand that Mr. Ji Xinian refund the full amount within 7 days. Every demand hit like a hammer, smashing hard into the hearts of my guardian mother and son. Impossible, the stepmother finally collapsed, screaming, "You're robbing us, Xin Yan. Say something quickly." Ji Xinian slowly raised his head, in those once spirited eyes. Now there was only endless defeat and fear. He looked at Qin Zhon, his voice hoarse. "Captain Qin, can we talk privately?" Qin Zhon coldly regarded him, as if looking at a petty clown. "I have nothing to talk with you about." He stood up, came over to me, took my hand, and his voice instantly softened. "Let's go, let's go home." At that moment, I felt as if someone had pulled me out of a dirty mud pit and washed away all the filth with the cleanest water, the feeling of being steadfastly protected by someone. When we walked out of the museum, it was already getting dusky. Qin Zhon had been holding my hand tightly all along. His large, warm palm transmitted a reassuring strength. "Thank you for today," I whispered. "I told you, from now on I'll be there." He turned his head to look at me. The light from the street lamp fell on his sharp features, and his eyes carried a touch of gentleness I had never seen before. "They won't trouble you again from now on, I promise." Back at the apartment in the military district, Silence had already brought dinner, 4 dishes and soup prepared by the military canteen, simple yet steaming with warmth. During dinner, Qin Zhon took a call. It was from the legal officer. "Yes, good, proceed with this plan. Don't give them any room to bargain, right? All procedures must be legal and compliant. We don't bully people, but we also won't allow others to bully military dependents." After hanging up, he saw I was looking at him and explained concisely, "G. Sinian wants to settle privately, to repurchase the shares at a price far below valuation, and also wants to repay that money in installments." I was a bit surprised, but he was certain. I refused. Then, as he spoke, he scooped a mouthful of green vegetables for me, one standard for all. "Not a penny less than what he owes you." I stared at the green vegetables in the bowl, feeling 100 emotions. The man was using the most direct and simple method to reclaim all justice and dignity. "For me, Qin Zhon." I put down my chopsticks and looked at him seriously. "To be honest, I never really planned to get that money back." "Why not?" He frowned. "It's what you deserve." I just wanted to completely cut ties with him and have nothing more to do with him. I gave a bitter smile. I was afraid he would think that everything I did was for the money. Qin Zhon was silent for a moment, watching me quietly. Then he suddenly spoke. "Shu Qingyang, do you think that if you get the money back, it would negate the feelings you had over the past 4 years?" I froze. He had hit the nail on the head. I was afraid to admit that 4 years of youth and devotion had ultimately only amounted to a pile of cold numbers that required legal pursuit. I would rather pretend that the money had all been thrown away, just to prove that my love had once been pure. "You're wrong." Qin Zhon's voice was low and firm. "Claiming your legal rights and the feelings you once gave are 2 different things. One protects your dignity and boundaries. The other is your past. You can't abandon your bottom line just because of a failed relationship." He looked at me with an unprecedented seriousness in his eyes. "Why should you care what someone who can't even see your efforts and worth, who even tries to take, who thinks of you, misses you? Your dignity isn't proven by his approval." His words were like a key, instantly unlocking the knot that had been tangled in my heart for so long. Yes, why was I still worried about Ji Xinyan's opinion? He was no longer worthy that night. I slept more soundly than ever the next day. The legal team officially issued an ultimatum to Ji Xinyan. Faced with the pressure from the military legal department and the impending lawsuit, Ji Xinyan completely fell apart. He called me countless times, but I didn't answer a single one. He started sending me messages, one after another, ranging from angry accusations at first to begging and repentance later. "Qing Yang, I was wrong. I really was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you that way, shouldn't have ignored your feelings. Why didn't you just tell me earlier that you were Qing Yang? If you had, things between us would never have turned out like this. I admit I got carried away by Mr. Long's project. But everything I did was for our future. I wanted to give you the best life possible. Qing Yang, please give me one more chance." "Okay, let's start over. I'll transfer 40% of the company's shares to your name." "No, 50% as long as you come back, the company will be ours." Reading these messages, I felt nothing but a mix of ridicule and sorrow. Even at the very end, he still believed the whole problem was that I hadn't revealed my true identity, still thought that shares and money could win me back. His regret was never about losing me, but about losing the EXP who could have brought him a $10 billion project. I took screenshots of all the messages, then calmly replied with my final one. "Mr. G, I think you've got it wrong. First, please address me as Mrs. Cheen. Second, the Russ you speak of ceased to exist the fourth time you left me waiting outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Finally, I wish you and your company all the best. After sending that, I blocked him again, this time, never to see him again, but I still underestimated how desperate a cornered man could become, unable to get through to me, and with his company on the verge of a cash flow crisis after offending Mr. Long and the entire collecting world, he pushed himself over the edge. A few days later, the internet was suddenly flooded with vicious rumors about me. Shocking. The truth behind National Treasure Restoration Master Expert, a chaotic private life and climbing the ranks through seduction, unveiling the conspiracy behind a military marriage, dumping a 4-year startup boyfriend before marrying into wealth. One article after another used the most sensational headlines, accompanied by doctored photos. Taken from deceptive angles, me discussing academic matters late at night with my mentor was framed as a secret rendezvous. A photo of me and Cheen John at the hospital was twisted into extramarital affairs, and supposed insider sources painted me as a scheming, promiscuous woman who would stop at nothing for money. Public opinion exploded in an instant. My name and photo were pinned on the hot search lists across major social platforms. I was subjected to countless merciless attacks from internet users who claim they know nothing of the facts, can't tell from the surface, you always act so aloof, turns out you are this kind of person, the most poisonous heart of a woman, staying with a man to start a business and then kicking him out, turning around to marry a soldier, is she looking for a strong backer? Shaming a military marriage is disgraceful, this kind of woman deserves to be censored. I watched those vicious comments, my limbs turning cold. I knew this was G. Sinyen's final counterattack. He wants to destroy me. Since he cannot obtain what he wants, he will completely ruin me, making me disgraced in this industry. The online storm arrived swiftly and fiercely, like an unforeseen tidal wave that swallows me in an instant. My phone blew up. Media inquiries, harassment and abuse from strangers, and concerns and questions from friends and colleagues. The museum's phone lines were also flooded. Countless people demanded severe punishment for the morally degenerate staff. The director couldn't withstand the pressure and could only suspend me temporarily, sending me home to wait for the investigation results. I locked myself in my apartment, drew the curtains to shut out the outside world. The room was dim, only the glow from the phone screen paling my face. I read through the indecent comments and so-called exposures one by one. Every line felt like a knife slashing at my nerves. They don't know me. They don't know that I can work days and nights without sleep to repair a relic, that I use a glue close to the original substance. My hands have been scarred by chemical reagents, and they don't know how much heart and money I invested in that 4-year relationship. They judge me with a few snapshots taken in a misleading light and a few passages of text that invert the truth, and yet they condemn me as if I were already dead. I felt an unprecedented sense of powerlessness and coldness. I know this was G. Sinyen's doing. He understands the power of public opinion too well for someone like me who works in culture as a technician. Reputation is everything. Once reputation is destroyed, a career is over. He wants not only to make me lose my job but also to completely collapse my spirit. I don't know how long I sat in the darkness until my phone rang. It was Cheen John. The moment I saw his name, I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I didn't want him to see me in such a sorry state, nor did I want him to be dragged into this dirty public opinion war because of me. A soldier's honor is more important than anything. I hung up. But he called again, and again, stubborn as always. Finally, I picked up, my voice hoarse beyond recognition, opened the door, came his brief reply on the other end. It took me a moment to realize he was right outside. I went to the door and saw a familiar figure through the peephole, still in his immaculate military uniform, standing there silently like a stoic statue. I opened the door, seeing my red, swollen eyes and haggard face. He said nothing, just stepped inside and pulled me into a tight embrace. His arms were warm, carrying a faint scent of soap and a reassuring strength that calmed me. I buried my face in his chest, and at that moment, all my grievances and fears finally found an outlet. I burst into tears. He didn't speak, only gently stroked my back with his broad palm until my sobs subsided. "I'm sorry," I choked out. I've disgraced you." He let me go, cupped my face, and and wiped away my tears with his thumb. His eyes were deep and steady, without a trace of doubt or blame. "You did nothing wrong. Why apologize?" He looked into my eyes and said each word deliberately. "The ones who should apologize are those hiding in the shadows, hurting you." My heart trembled. I had expected him to question me, to doubt me, to be angry that I was being smeared, but he didn't. He didn't even ask what those photos were about. He simply chose to believe me unconditionally. "But now everyone doesn't include me," he interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "I trust my own eyes, and I trust my wife." He led me to the sofa and sat me down, then took out a military laptop and a thick stack of documents from his briefcase. The moment the news broke online, I had my team in the tech department start tracking it. He opened the laptop, and the screen displayed complex code and data streams. "All the bot accounts and the IP addresses of the first media outlets to publish have been locked down." He handed me the documents. "Here's the information on the AstroTurfing company, along with their contract with Sheenher Venture Capital. And here's the data on the shareholders behind those initial media outlets. 2 of them have direct financial ties with G. Sinian." I stared at him in shock, looking at the incredibly detailed investigation report. Only a few hours had passed since the scandal erupted, and he had already uncovered the mastermind behind it all. Was this the power of a soldier's resolve? I don't know what to say. He closed his laptop, took my cold hand in his gaze calm yet sharp. "Listen to me. This battle isn't yours alone. You are not fighting by yourself. From the day you became a military spouse, your honor has been my honor, and the honor of this unit. We will never allow anyone to use despicable means to seriously injure someone who protects our nation's cultural treasures, nor to slander the family member of an active duty soldier." His words were like a beam of light, instantly piercing through all the darkness and gloom around me. I looked at him, at the unwavering resolve and protection in his eyes, and suddenly understood the kind of man I had married. He may not know how to be romantic or speak sweet words, but he would use the most powerful actions to hold up the sky for me. "So what do we do now?" I asked, my voice already free of its earlier panic. A cold smile curved at the corner of Chin John's mouth. "G. Sinian likes to play the public opinion game, doesn't he? Then let's play a big one with him." Under Chin John's arrangement, a silent counter-offensive quietly begins. Following his instructions, I first posted an open letter on my personal social account. The letter contains neither hysterical excuses nor tearful pleas. It calmly states the entire journey from our startup to our breakup, attaching partial transfer records and the equity transfer agreement he forced me to sign. I wrote, "For years of affection, I once treasured it and gave everything. But when my efforts and dignity could be sacrificed time and again under the pretexts of projects and the future, I understood that between us, it was no longer love but an unequal transaction. Choosing to let go is my final act of self-respect. For those photos and statements that smear me, I only wrote one sentence. The clean shall remain clean, the dirty shall remain dirty. I have engaged a lawyer and reported to the relevant military authorities, and I will hold all rumor mongers and defamers legally accountable, with no leniency." Finally, I tagged my newly wed husband Chin John and attached a photo of our marriage certificate, writing, "Among tens of millions of people, in the boundless wilderness of time, I neither arrived a moment early nor late, but just in time. Thank you, Mr. Chin, for letting me know what true respect and guardianship look like." As soon as this letter was released, it caused an uproar online. Unlike previous inflammatory exposés, my calm, restrained, and well-reasoned open letter quickly won the just of some rational netizens. "I feel like a reversal is coming. This lady writes so well, neither humble nor pushy." Highlight, for years of transfers totaling over 1 million, stood up at the Civil Affairs Bureau for the 4th time. Holy crap, if this is true, the ex-boyfriend is the ultimate scumbag. Wait. I looked up her husband Chin John. He seems to be a 3rd-class merit recipient from last year's flood rescue efforts. Oh my god, this scumbag is willing to slander even a military medal for business gain. The tide of public opinion began to shift subtly, and this was only the first step. Immediately after, an official military media account released a bombshell statement: "Strictly punish cyberbullying, protect the legal rights and interests of military personnel and their families." The statement was stern in tone, explicitly condemning recent online defamation and slander against active duty military personnel and their family member, Xu Qingyang. It also noted that the military, in coordination with public security authorities, had formally filed and investigated individuals and organizations suspected of inciting trouble and defamation. At the end of the statement, a lengthy list was attached, clearly naming the media outlets that first released the smear campaign. Along with the astroturfing company, the authorities' swift action immediately exploded across the internet. If my personal clarification had left netizens skeptical, the military's official intervention was undoubtedly a ham with one blow. It nailed Ji Xinian to the pillar of shame. Now that the authorities have stepped in, the nature of this has completely changed. We've always said military marriages are untouchable. Is that CEO surnamed Ji insane? He dares to smear a military spouse. Does he want to destroy his company, Xinhe Capital? Right. We'll boycott it every time we see it from now on. Public opinion instantly reversed 180 degrees. Netizens who had been the most vicious in their attacks began deleting comments and apologizing, turning their fury toward Ji Xinian and Xinhe Capital instead. As a result, the company's stock price plummeted, and it didn't end there. That same afternoon, the revered dragon of China's collecting circle, the mysterious Mr. Long, issued a statement through his foundation's official account. In highly appreciative language, he introduced Master Qingyang, that is, me and my exceptional achievements in the field of cultural relic restoration. Praising me as a person of both virtue and skill, a national treasure, the statement concluded unequivocally, given that Mr. Ji Xinian, president of Xinhe Capital, has resorted to despicable means to suppress and defame Ms. Xu Qingyang, a top national expert in artistic relic restoration. His character is thus self-evident. We have decided to permanently terminate all cooperation negotiations with Xinhe Capital and place it on the blacklist of all investment projects under the foundation. If the military's statement was a legal judgment, then Mr. Long's statement was undeniably a commercial death sentence for Xinhe Capital. Cut off from Mr. Long's support and blacklisted by the entire collecting and investment communities, the future of Xinhe Capital is not hard to foresee. I looked at the news constantly popping up on my phone, watching Ji Xinian transform from a highly sought-after young talent into a heartless scumbag despot. It seems this text is incomplete here. Maybe it should be despised or something similar, but based on the requirements, I keep it as it is, read by everyone. This part seems incomplete or has an unclear start, assuming it's a typo and might be something like admired by everyone. Yet, I felt no sense of revenge, only endless melancholy. He once had dreams and ambitions but lost his way in the torrent of capital, abandoning his original intentions. What are you thinking about? Qin Zhon's voice came from beside me. I shook my head. Nothing. I just feel like I've been dreaming. This isn't a dream. He took my hand and pulled me into his arms. This is reality. Anyone who tries to trample on the bottom line must pay the price. Leaning against his shoulder, I felt the steady beat of his heart, a sense of security I had never known before. Qin Zhon, I asked softly, when did you start having people investigate? He paused for a moment, then replied, before you released your open letter. My heart warmed while I had been drowning in self-doubt and pain. He had already paved the way for my counterattack. Without asking a single question, he quietly did everything. This kind of trust moved me more than any sweet words ever could. Thank you, Qin Zhon. I lifted my head, looked into his eyes, and repeated sincerely, really, thank you. He gazed at me, his deep eyes seeming to shimmer with starlight. Slowly, he lowered his head, his warm breath brushing against my face, and my heart skipped a beat, just as he was close enough for me to see the delicate length of his eyelashes. He stopped, his Adam's apple bobbed, and his voice came out a little hoarse. Xu Qingyang, ding dong. The doorbell rang at just the wrong moment. Like a bucket of cold water dousing the tension in the air seemed to still. Qin Zhon's body stiffened. Then, he straightened up awkwardly and cleared his throat. I'll get the door. I sat on the sofa, my cheeks burning and my heart still racing. In that instant just now, I thought he was going to kiss me. Outside the door stood my mentor, Professor Zhong, and the museum director, Xiaoshu. Thank goodness you're all right. As soon as the director entered, he grasped my hand excitedly and repeated, you've been wronged. truly wronged. Professor Zhong also looked at me with relief and patted me on the shoulder. Well done, I knew justice would prevail. I quickly invited them to sit down and said apologetically, Director, Professor Zhong, I'm really sorry that my personal matters have caused such trouble for the museum. Oh, what are you saying? The director waved his hand repeatedly. We're the ones who should apologize. We suspended you when you needed support the most. Xiaoshu, don't worry, you'll come back to work starting tomorrow. I've already posted an apology and an explanation of the situation on the museum's bulletin board. He paused, then looked at Qin Zhon, who was standing calmly nearby, his eyes filled with admiration and gratitude. Of course. The person we owe the most thanks to this time is Battalion Commander Qin. If he hadn't acted swiftly, who knows how those unscrupulous media outlets would have twisted this. Qin Zhon stood up and gave a slight nod to the director. You're too kind. Director, protecting my family is my responsibility. Just a few words, but they carried immense weight. After the pleasantries, Professor Zhong revealed the main purpose of their visit. Qingyang, do you still remember Mr. Long's Tang Dynasty portrait of a lady? I nodded. After Mr. Long's statement was released, Ji Xinyan's side completely collapsed. But his restoration center project is still moving forward. Professor Zhong's eyes sparkled. He called personally today to officially invite you to become the future Chief Technical Officer of the Restoration Center, with full authority over the entire project. I froze. Chief Technology Officer, 100 million yuan project. This windfall of an opportunity left me a little overwhelmed. The director smiled and added, Mr. Long also proposed a deep strategic cooperation between our museum and his. In the future, the Restoration Center will share resources with us and jointly cultivate talent. He has also decided to donate a batch of national treasures from his private collection to the museum free of charge. This is incredibly good news for me and for the entire museum. I know this decision came suddenly, Professor Zhong said earnestly, looking at me, but this is what you deserve. Your talent should not be buried in a small restoration room. You have the ability, and you should stand on a broader stage so the world can see the superb Chinese artifact restoration skills. I met the earnest gaze of my mentor and the director, then looked at Qin Zhon beside me, who quietly supported me, and the long, simmering fire in my heart reignited. Yes, why should I let Ji Nyan's dismissal of my value define me? I am Xu Qingyang, a top-tier artifact restorer. That is my identity, my pride. I took a deep breath and nodded firmly. Teacher, director, I accept the invitation. 3 days later, the National Museum's Rare Art Restoration Achievement Conference and the launch ceremony for the Longting Art Restoration Center project were grandly held in the National Grand Hall. It was the industry's highest profile event, with top domestic and international experts, collectors, heads of major museums, and mainstream media all in attendance. I, as the chief restorer of the recently completed mature porcelain plate restoration project and the future chief technology officer of the Restoration Center, was naturally on the guest list. I sat in the front row of the conference in a tasteful white suit, flanked by Mr. Long, the invited guest, and the director. Beside me sat Qin Zhon, who was only allowed to attend as a representative of military families. Today he wasn't in uniform. His black suit made him appear even taller and more stalwart, quietly sitting by my side like a steady mountain, giving me immense reassurance. The press conference proceeded in an orderly fashion, and just as the host was about to introduce the Restoration Center project, a commotion suddenly erupted at the back of the venue. I turned to look and saw a figure stumbling forward through the staff's efforts to stop him. Ji Xinyan. He had thinned considerably, his eye sockets hollow, yellow, his hair disheveled, and the haute couture suit he had once been so proud of now creased and tattered, full of despair. Hardly any trace of the former ambitious business elite remained. Qingyang. He pushed his way through the crowd, tearing at my name with a heart-wrenching cry, and all eyes instantly focused on him. The security guards rushed to move him away, but Mr. Long suddenly spoke with cool detachment. Let him come. The security guard was stunned for a moment, then he followed the instruction and released Ji Xinyan. He grasped at the last lifeline and staggered to the stage, but did not look at me. Instead, he dropped to his knees with a thud in front of Mr. Long, please just give me another chance. He was overwhelmed with tears, completely disregarding his dignity. I know I was wrong, I was bewitched. I am willing to transfer all my shares in Shinha Venture to you free of charge. I want nothing in return. I only beg you to show mercy and spare me. The crowd was in an uproar. No one had expected that the once incredibly successful Ji Zong would come to such a pitiful state, begging for forgiveness. No one had expected Ji Zong to appear here in such a humiliating fashion. Mr. Long looked down at him from a superior height, his eyes calm and untroubled, as if regarding a pathetic ant. Mr. G, I think you've misunderstood. Mr. Long's voice was soft, yet carried clearly through the microphone to the entire venue. The one who can determine your fate has never been me. He paused, and his gaze slowly shifted toward me, but the one you yourself gave up and are attempting to destroy is MS, Shu Qingyang, whom you are about to meet. Ji Xinian stiffened, finally lifted his head, and looked at me with bloodshot eyes that intertwined regret, unwillingness, pleading, and a trace of deep fear that even he hadn't noticed. The host reacted quickly and took the floor. Thank you, Mr. Long. Now, with the most enthusiastic applause, let us invite the host restorer of this Ruyao Orange Plate Restoration Project, also the future Chief Technical Officer of Longting Art Restoration Center, the renowned teacher Qing Yang, who has gained wide attention on the internet. The spotlight swept onto me, and under all those eyes, I slowly stood up. Qin Zhon stood behind me, his warm hand gently patting my back, as if conveying silent support. I took a deep breath, faced that dazzling beam of light, and stepped onto the stage. In the audience, Ji Xinian remained kneeling there, lifting his head to look at me with a completely unfamiliar, almost despairing gaze. Perhaps only at this moment did he truly realize that there was a whole world between us. I stand at the podium, my gaze calmly sweeping over the audience below, the eyes that once filled me with curiosity, doubt, and even disdain. Hello everyone, I am Shu Qingyang, also known to you as Qingyang. My voice rings clearly and steadily through the microphone. In the past half-month, I have endured the darkest storm of my life, being slandered, being abused, shed onto the jury stand of public opinion by the person I trusted most. The room falls silent, with only the camera shutters clicking. Many people ask me, why not reveal my identity earlier? If I had spoken earlier, would these misunderstandings not have occurred? I pause, fixing my gaze on Ji Cyanian in the front row, a cold arc tugging at the corner of my mouth. What I want to say is this: a person's value should not be defined by a code name or so-called identity. When I was not yet Qingyang, would my professional integrity and dedication as a relic restorer not deserve respect? Should the independence of a woman's personality and dignity be trampled at will? No, of course not. Today I stand here, not to prove how remarkable I am, nor to seek pity. I simply want to tell everyone, especially the women who quietly give in relationships, who go unseen and unrespected, that your value comes from yourself, from your hands, your mind, your character. You do not need to depend on anyone, and you certainly do not need to prove your existence by someone else's definition. If you endure, I will respect myself. If you bloom, the fresh breeze will come to you. When the words fall, the audience first falls into a momentary silence, then erupts in thunderous applause that lasts a long time. I see my mentor and the curator with red-rimmed eyes. Qin Zhon in the first row gazes at me with pride and admiration in his eyes. Unmistakably, at this moment, Mr. Long also steps onto the stage, takes the microphone handed by the host, stands beside me, facing the whole hall, and says, "Teacher Shu spoke very well just now. His voice is loud and powerful. I have sought Qingyang across 3 generations, not only for her almost supernatural skill but also for her backbone that does not bow to capital nor is swayed by fame and profit. Such a person is a treasure of the country and should not be defiled by anyone." He turned the topic around, and his cold gaze shot toward Ji Xinian in the audience. Ji Xinian, do you think you've ruined only one woman's reputation? No, you've ruined your own conscience, the most fundamental credibility of a businessman. I hereby declare. Mr. Long raised his hand. My legal team will officially file lawsuits against Ji Xinian and New Harmony Ventures, holding them legally responsible for commercial fraud, defamation, and a series of other liabilities. Not only do we demand that he compensate all economic losses, but he must pay the price for his actions. if the previous wave of public opinion turmoil had merely put GC company in crisis, Mr. Long's words were equivalent to directly sentencing New Harmony Ventures to death. GC collapsed completely, his face ashen, and this is not the end. The venue doors were pushed open, and two uniformed officers, led by a middle-aged officer wearing a colonel's insignia, strode in with a calm pace. They walked up to Qin Zhon, stood in attention, and saluted. The colonel in charge nodded at Qin Zhon, then walked onto the stage. Taking the microphone from Mr. Long, "Hello, everyone. I am the head of the Political Work Department of the Eastern Theater Command." His voice carried the stern bearing unique to soldiers. "With the approval of higher authorities, I announce two things here. First, regarding the recent online defamation of our province's outstanding officer Comrade Qin Zhon and his family, MS. Xu Qingyang, the Joint Task Force of the military and civilian authorities has completed investigations and evidence collection. The prime suspect Ji Xinyan is suspected of defamation, creating trouble, and infringing on trade secrets. With solid evidence, from now on, the judiciary will arrest him in accordance with the law and file a public prosecution. As soon as the words fell, two guards who had been waiting at the side immediately stepped forward, one on each side, lifting Ji Xinyan, who was paralyzed on the ground. The cold handcuffs clicked shut around the hand he had used to sign multimillion contracts. He had no strength to struggle, dragged out like a dead dog. The whole venue fell silent, everyone stunned by this earth-shaking scene. The colonel swept a glance over the crowd and continued to announce the second thing. Second, in light of MS. Xu Qingyan's outstanding contributions to artifact preservation, and the resilience and noble character shown in this incident, she is exemplary as a military family member. After an upper-level decision, she is awarded the title of Top 10 Outstanding Army Wives nationally. He paused, his gaze turning to me, revealing a hint of a smile appeared as he said, "At the same time, led by me and in collaboration with the National Cultural Heritage Administration, we officially launched the Special Cultural Project Civil Military Code Construction. Guarding the national pulse, we will invite MS. Xu Qingyang to serve as the Chief Technical Advisor for this project, which is named in the name of the country. Comrade Xu Qingyang, please come forward." My mind went completely blank, and I almost instinctively stepped forward. The colonel personally pinned a heavy honorary medal engraved with the national emblem onto my chest. Then he turned to Qin Zhon in the audience and announced in a clear voice, "Comrade Qin Zhon." Qin Zhon shot to his feet, standing as straight and firm as a rifle, and responded, "Here, your wife, Comrade Xu Qingyang, is now officially entrusted to your protection. Can you accomplish this mission?" Qin Zhon's gaze cut through the crowd and met mine from afar, his eyes slightly reddened, and with all his strength, he roared out an answer that rang through the entire hall. "Yes, mission accomplished." In that moment, I looked at him, at the 1,000 stars in his eyes, and knew that what existed between us was more than a contract written in a marriage certificate. We were already bound by fate together. After the press conference, Ji Xinyan's name, along with the new venture he personally founded, vanished from the public eye. He would face the fairest legal judgment, and his once coddled mother, upon learning of her son's arrest, fell gravely ill. Her former swagger dissolved into wails on a hospital bed. Their story, for me, had utterly turned a new page, while my life opened a brand new chapter. Top 10 Outstanding Military Wives in the country. Chief Technical Advisor for Civil Military Joint Construction Projects. One heavy honor after another lifted me from a repairer known only within a small circle to a public figure in the spotlight. Work became exceptionally busy. On one hand, I was preparing Mr. Long's restoration center. On the other, I was coordinating with the military on cultural projects. I worked almost non-stop, but I loved it. When the craft of restoring an artifact rises to the height of preserving culture and guarding history, the sense of purpose that comes with it fills me with strength every day, and Qin Zhon became my strongest support. Though he remained busy with military training and duties, whenever he had a moment, he would drive to pick me up after work. He spoke little, and most of the time would just quietly listen to music in the car, but he would thoughtfully prepare warm water, and when I grew tired and leaned on the passenger seat to sleep, he would gently cover me with his jacket. Our home also transformed from a temporary apartment into a true harbor for the two of us. I moved my professional books and tools into the study, and he arranged his medals and my certificates of honor side by side on weekends. We would shop together at the supermarket. He pushed the cart and followed behind me as I picked ingredients, and he paid. I would cook his favorite braised pork. He wasn't much of a chef, but he awkwardly helped wash vegetables and do the dishes. We rarely talked about love, but every detail of life was filled with warmth and tacit understanding. That day, I had just finished a 10-hour restoration seminar and trudged home exhausted. Pushing open the door, I was greeted by the aroma of home-cooked food. I was stunned to see Qin Zhon, this man who rarely even entered the kitchen, wearing a pink cartoon apron and bustling in the kitchen. The dining table already had 3 dishes and a soup ready. The presentation was a bit unrefined, the greens were clearly overcooked, and the tomato and egg soup looked more like watery scrambled tomatoes with added water, but I couldn't help but laugh. Are you? Qin Zhon heard the noise and poked his head out from the kitchen. When he saw me, a faint trace of nervousness and unease flickered across his usually cold, stern face. You're back. He untied his apron, walked over, and naturally took my bag. Today is our 100th day since getting our marriage license. My heart suddenly warmed. I had even forgotten the day myself, yet he had remembered it. So this meal is. Before I could finish, I caught a suspicious blush creeping up to the tips of his ears. I learned it from the head cook in the mess hall. It might not taste very good, but just give it a try, he explained in a low voice, walking to the table. I picked up my chopsticks and took a bite of the dark-colored greens. The salty, bitter the taste hit my tongue. It was far from delicious, but I still looked up with a smile and said, "It's good. These are the best greens I've ever had." A flicker of joy crossed his eyes, and then, as if having made up his mind, he turned and took out a small velvet box from behind him. The moment he went down on one knee, the box was gently opened. Inside was no diamond ring, but a ring handcrafted from a bullet casing, with the names Yang Zhon and Shu Qingyang unevenly engraved on the inner side. Looking up at me with an earnestness I had never seen before, he said, "I know our beginning was absurd. I can't give you a romantic ceremony, and I may not even be able to stay by your side often, but this ring was made from the bullet casing I used to guard our border. By giving it to you, I am entrusting you with my life and my loyalty. I don't know if this counts as a proposal, but Comrade Shu Qingyang, I love you. Will you spend the rest of your life with me?" I couldn't hold back my tears any longer, and one by one they fell onto the simple, unadorned ring. I don't need a diamond worth a fortune, nor a wedding that draws the world's attention. These words alone are enough. I reached out my hand, let him slip the ring onto my finger, then leaned in to kiss his lips. I do. In his eyes shone something like a universe of stars. That was my home, but happiness is always fleeting. Just as we were holding each other, dreaming of the future, my phone rang with the familiar tone for an emergency mission. He answered and his face instantly turned serious. "Copy that, level 1 alert, returning to base immediately." After hanging up, he looked at me apologetically. Though reluctant to part, I felt no panic. "Go, I'll take care of things here." I stood up and smoothed the collar of his military uniform, pressing out every crease. He looked at me intently for a few seconds, then suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace. His hoarse voice whispered in my ear, "Wait for me to come back." "Okay, I'll wait for you." I watched the military vehicle disappear into the night, but this time I didn't cry. Back inside, I looked at the still steaming food on the table and touched the unique bullet shell ring on my finger, feeling a quiet strength I had never known before. I knew that waiting would become a way of life, but I'm not afraid. Far away, a man protects the country with his life, and I will protect our little home with my hands. My battlefield has come to an end. His battlefield is always ahead, and I am his most steadfast way home.